To say I'm honored is an understatement. Thank you, President McDowell, faculty, parents, friends, trustees, Bishop Bambera, and most especially, members of the graduating class of 2013. I'm honored to be here again at this wonderful institution, and I'm in awe of you, the graduates, both for your youth and your accomplishment. And I realize that such a salutation to be honored at a commencement is commonplace at such events, but on this occasion, on this splendid spring day, the words are especially true and heartfelt because I speak them as a college dropout. Because my experience in college makes me all the more appreciative of your achievements as graduates and what you've accomplished these years here at Misericordia. Let me begin by telling you that no decision I've ever made has been more important or right for me than that decision in the early 1960s to drop out of the University of Maryland. After only a few semesters of very little academic accomplishment in the next state over. That decision to drop out kept me, happily, on the professional path that I've been on for more than half a century since, and it has also made me aware of the knowledge that I lack in so many areas that I've had to school myself in, and also to understand something about what you graduates bring to the world that's so extraordinary in the way of youthful wisdom and having been exposed to great writings, to great teachings, to great learning, to ideas, and let me say something else today, to Catholic social teaching. One of the great contributions to mankind. And to have had that experience, I cannot tell you how lucky I think you are to have grown up with that tradition and to absorb it and to consider it and to bring it forth into the world and into the problematic and difficult era which you will go into when you leave here today. But that grounding in Catholic social teaching is one of the great gifts, and use it and cherish it. In addition, I was lucky. I discovered at a very young age what I love to do, and I'm still loving it and learning from it and crafting it and getting it right sometimes. And when it's not right, it's not from lack of trying or having learned the wrong lessons. And so it will be for you, because you've learned the right lessons here, not just in the classroom, and now you're ready to shape your own destiny, fulfill your own dreams. You're no longer required to follow the expectations of others, neither your parents nor your teachers. I made that decision a little early, to my parents' consternation, when I was 16 years old in my junior year in high school. And I should say it was in Silver Spring, Maryland, where I got to know the sisters very, very well at St. Bernadette's. And I went to work at a great institution almost full-time when I was 16, a Washington newspaper called the Washington Star, the town's afternoon paper in those days. And I grew up and was educated in that newsroom, not in a college, by a wonderful group of people, all of them older than I was, who understood what the press, this calling of journalism and reporting, was about. And they knew how to have the time of their lives doing what they loved in a collegial environment that teemed with excitement and with drama. And part of you leaving here today is about finding that path to do what you love and what excites you and exhilarates you and challenges you. In 1960, when I went to work at the Star, John Kennedy was running for president. Since then, it's been my privilege and good luck to report on each succeeding president of the United States, to write books about them and about a great pope, and about the woman who may be the next president or may not be Hillary Clinton, and about the history of our time, and also for more than 40 years now, to travel around this country, especially between the two coasts, to every state, and to learn about the magnificent people who are too often forgotten in Washington, both in our politics and our journalism, especially our working people, our working class people, our middle class people who struggle every day increasingly. The greatest lesson that I learned at the Washington Star has been the underpinning of my work since at the Washington Post as well, and since, I hope, in everything I've done. The idea that two notions inform what we journalists ought to do, and which have larger implications, it seems to me, for our country, for our culture, and for your roles as well in this society. The first rule is that the press exists for the public good, not just to make money or entertain or to merely cause controversy. And secondly, that our primary function as reporters and editors and publishers and news providers, whether online or in print or in TV or video, is to give our readers and viewers the best obtainable version of the truth. I'm going to come back to that very basic term again, the best obtainable version of the truth, because almost a half century after I went to work, in your era today, it's clear that something is not working in America today, that our system is straining, both our journalism and our politics, certainly strained as never before since I went to work that half century ago. The notion of the public good, which I fervently hope that you graduates will embrace in whatever you choose to involve yourself in professionally and in terms of civic avocation after you've left Misericordia, that notion of the public good particularly as the underpinning of our politics and our media has been, in my lifetime, undermined and overwhelmed by self-interest and careerism, by partisan assertion, and above all, by ideological and cultural warfare, particularly in Washington, where I was born and raised, at the expense of the national interest. And I think one of the things that I see throughout the country today amongst young people like yourselves is this great desire to move beyond this cultural ideological warfare which my generation and its immediate successors has placed upon your generation as a yoke. This difficult business of the best obtainable version of the truth as an underpinning of our politics and our media is not our priority enough anymore, neither as providers of news, nor as participants in our politics, and indeed as consumers of news and information and media. Too many people in this country today are not looking for the best obtainable version of the truth, but rather going to sources of information to buttress their already previously held prejudices, ideologies, partisan beliefs, religious beliefs, not open to truth, not open to the kind of inquiry and openness and delving into the great and complex questions of our day as you've been taught here at Misericordia. So part of the blame, part of this cultural phenomenon which you find yourself in the midst of inheriting, goes all around, not just the politicians, but also to much of our people. Today, the picture of our society as rendered in our media and our politics in America is too often illusionary and delusionary, disfigured, unreal, out of touch with truth, disconnected from the true context of your lives and of all of our lives. It's disfigured by manufactured controversy, by celebrity worship, by sensationalism, by denial of our society's real conditions, good and bad, and especially by this social and political discourse that we, meaning the press, the politicians, and the people of my generation, have allowed to devolve into a cacophony of name-calling, ideological warfare, and easy answers to the tough questions that you should be asking and that you should be demanding answers to. Washington, a great journalist named Leslie Gelb wrote in his last column for the New York Times, around the time that most of you were born, he said, and I quote, "Washington is largely indifferent to truth. Truth has been reduced to a conflict of press releases and a conflict of handlers. Truth is judged not by evidence, but by theatrical performance. Truth is fear, fear of opinion polls, fear of special interests, fear of judging others for fear of being judged, fear of losing power and prestige. Truth has become the acceptance of untruths." And that from 20 years ago, think of the past week in Washington. And that too is sadly the world into which you will be immersed after you leave this bright, wonderful campus. But with your values, with Catholic social teaching, with your smarts, with the values of a 21st century liberal education, I believe you, graduates of Misericordia, won't accept untruths for the basis of our public life, won't accept untruths for the basis of your lives. The truth is often complex. The best obtainable version of the truth is partly about context and complexity, and this is perhaps the most egregious example of the single failing of our journalism and media today, and certainly of our politics. For too much of it, maybe even most of it, is utterly without context and complexity the way it is presented. Facts by themselves, as you've learned in your classes here, is not the truth. And that is a lesson, too, of life beyond graduation. That complexity is really the stuff of real life, that not everything is reducible to a pure extract. The other day I was asked in an interview, why hasn't the press been able to topple the government like Watergate? To which I said, it's not the job of the press to topple governments. It's the job of the press to report on the real existing conditions of a culture, a society, a government, a campus, a sports event, not to bring about the desired result of the reporter or newspaper editor or owner of the website. It's the job of the people, the job of the legislature that they elect to topple the government if that is what to happen, the job of the larger system, its institutions, and the people of the country, and to help in a constructive way the government and those who serve in it and those whom are elected to go to the state legislature and to Washington. In Watergate, which you have studied, we saw democratic principles, American principles, succeed in a way that reaffirmed our common belief in the ideas of government that serves its citizens, in the rule of law, an example we may have hoped for but have not seen in your lifetime. In your lifetime, we've seen a failure of truth, overwhelmed by misinformation, a failure of competence, overwhelmed by incompetence in government, of a failure of institutions to deal with the problems and, yes, greatness of our working class and middle class people. When I went to college, as brief as it was, a college education might have cost $1,000. You're riddled with student debt that my generation has placed on your experience. What I'm getting to is that the absolutism and dogmatism and demagoguery of our politics, particularly in the United States Congress today, is at the heart of a breakdown of one of the three essential branches of government, which has failed utterly to solve the greatest problem of your inheritance, and that is whether we are going to become a nation of the wealthy, for the wealthy, by the wealthy and the privileged, at the expense of the great majority of our people. 10% of the people who live within the distance that you and I can see when you were processing in here are unemployed. My generation is responsible for that, and your generation is going to have to be responsible for solving the failures of my generation. Because what we are doing today is allowing plutocratic values, not Catholic social teaching, not meritocracy, to begin to overwhelm the great traditions and opportunities in this country that my parents enjoyed, that I enjoyed, and that you now have to struggle for harder than we did. So class of 2013, what can I, a dropout of the class of 1965, tell you that might help you as you graduate from this stage of your life to the beginning of the rest? How might my rather unusual path and experience be useful to you? Here are a couple lessons that I've learned and pass on briefly today. First, the essential rule of reporting that has paid off time and time again for me, and that I think pays off in almost all aspects of life. Be a good listener. Don't be bound by preconceived notions and ideas. Let those preconceived notions and ideas be the beginning of an inquiry, but don't think you know the answer without going out and doing the work of finding out and inquiring and delving and looking for the best obtainable version of the truth. I worry a lot these days that we've evolved in this country a culture in which mistakes or failure are not really permitted. Many years ago, I met the great American artist Robert Rauschenberg, and I was fascinated by what Rauschenberg had as a kind of counterintuitive way of doing things and what mattered most to him. And I quote Robert Rauschenberg, quote, "Screwing things up is a virtue," he said in an interview when he was 74 years old. And he went on, "Being correct is never the point. I have an almost fanatically correct assistant, and by the time she respells my words and corrects my punctuation, I can't read what I wrote. Being right can stop all the momentum of a very interesting idea," end quote. That's part of the spirit of being a graduate and commencing into the world beyond this place. Failure is very often, pardon me if I say this, the way we learn best. If we're not permitted to fail, we're not permitted to dare. So I say to you on your graduating day, don't leave this place playing safe. Leave this place ready to dare, and ready to stumble, and ready to fall and learn from it, and to get up again. Some of my greatest lessons of life, difficult as they might have been, have come from mistakes and stumbles and failures. And yet, in daring, in acknowledging the possibility of failure, you're able to experience the incredible joy and fulfillment and exhilaration and have the best of life by trusting yourself, your instincts, not necessarily what others have told you. So yes, leave here, understand the rules beyond this Eden-like idyllic setting, but pick the rules that you want to challenge and break very carefully, and know why you're bending them and challenging them and even breaking them, and the possible consequences of doing that. But risk is rewarded. I don't know of many great men and women in history or people I've encountered who have led really fulfilling lives who simply followed the rules. They questioned them very seriously, and they spoke out, and they listened carefully, respectfully, and they learned, but they expressed themselves with all the iconoclasm and genius and force that a really good education like you've gotten here at Misericordia, a really good education, however we come by it, allows us to dare. So when you learn to go beyond fear of losing something, fear of not getting what you think you want, when you learn that daring is part of what you need to do away from the cocoon that has been your education at home and in school, you're really given a great opportunity, because that fear, you can now say, is no longer going to govern what I do. And when you're able to do that, to move through that fear, you really commence. So my hope today is that you leave this wonderful place, remember it, cherish it, and say, I'm going to find, like this commencement speaker that I heard, what I love to do. I'm going to find a path in life and a calling, whether it's a job or an interest or a service that I love. And I'm going to take what I have learned up through this commencement and apply it to that. And then I'm going to dare to do it my way. That's what I've learned at Misericordia. That's why I've been here. I'm ready. Class of 2013, congratulations. I salute you. I'm in awe of you. Thank you.